Exploring ExtraFax for Microsoft Exchange and Microsoft 365. Organization Management Overview, Part 1. Once ExtraFax has been installed and the initial system setup has been completed via the ExtraFax Management Console, the next configuration that needs attention is the Organization Management. This is accomplished through the ExtraFax Administration web interface as seen here. This tutorial will cover the most popular settings and configurations. For full product documentation, please visit our website. On the Organization General tab, update the organization information as needed to match the specific details of your particular organization. For organizations that plan to synchronize user information from Active Directory into ExtraFax, select the desired synchronization options from the available selections as seen below. To configure a synchronization rule for Active Directory, proceed to the User Synchronization view in the Organization Management section of the ExtraFax Administration web interface. To configure a sender from name and from email address that will be used for fax notification emails, update the Email Notification Settings section as seen below. Under Organization Outbound Settings, let's take a look at some of the most common configurations that should be considered. For an explanation of a configuration parameter that is not covered during this tutorial, refer to the ExtraFax for Exchange Administration Guide for more information. To assign a default cover page at an organization level, configure this parameter. To enforce that the default cover page is used across the organization, select Enforce. When Enforce is selected, users will not be able to use another cover page. If the organization plans to have a chargeback model in place for outbound faxes, be sure to assign a default billing code. A popular configuration choice is to define whether or not a copy of outbound faxes should be saved by default at an organization level. Options include None, TIFF, PDF, Searchable PDF, PDFA, Searchable PDFA, or Searchable PDF using ABI Recognition Server. Creating searchable PDF files requires either Adobe Acrobat Standard or Professional to be installed on the ExtraFax server. To configure at an organization level whether or not to enable delivery reports or to configure delivery priority, make the appropriate selections. If the organization has more than one fax port and there is a preference to configure a default preferred port, make the desired selection or leave the parameter at the default setting of No Preferred Ports. If there are any compliance or internal governance which necessitates the requirement to delete content after it has been faxed, select this important parameter. When this configuration is set, a fax log will be maintained, however the actual fax content will be deleted. If there's an organization requirement which states that all outbound faxes must go through an approval process before the fax is permitted to be sent, enable and then configure this parameter. To configure how cover page information should be populated, select the preferred source of information. Under Organization Inbound Settings, let's take a look at some of the most common configurations that should be considered. For an explanation of a configuration parameter that is not covered during this tutorial, refer to the ExtraFax for Exchange Administration Guide for more information. A popular configuration choice is to define whether or not a copy of inbound faxes should be saved by default at an organization level. Options include None, TIFF, PDF, Searchable PDF, PDFA, Searchable PDFA, or Searchable PDF using ABI Recognition Server. Creating searchable PDF files requires either Adobe Acrobat Standard or Professional to be installed on the ExtraFax server. Popular within many organizations is the ability to either print incoming faxes or to save incoming faxes to a file system. Saving incoming faxes to a file system is ideal for instances where incoming faxes need to be imported into, for example, a document management system. To configure at an organization level, the behavior to follow when a fax is either routed automatically or manually, set these parameters. Options include routing all pages, first page plus link, or link only. This is achieved through an email notification. To access fax content when links are used, requires the recipient to use the ExtraFax web browser interface. There is also the ability to customize the email notification content for routed faxes if so desired. To configure which email addresses should be notified in the event a fax could not be routed as a result of there not being an inbound routing document configured, set this option. To save a multi-page incoming fax as a single file, select the appropriate option. To insert a timestamp and fax record number prefixed to the incoming fax file name, make the desired selection. Default options are shown below. Configuring security settings for the organization is critically important and should be considered a priority when configuring ExtraFax. Any users or groups listed in the Organization Administrator security field are able to maintain and update any settings located under the Organization Management section in the ExtraFax web user interface. Any users or groups listed in the Inbound Fax Administrator security field are granted the ability to maintain and route inbound faxes via the ExtraFax web user interface. Any user or groups listed in the Cover Page Designers security field are granted the ability to maintain ExtraFax cover pages via the ExtraFax web user interface. Any users or groups listed in the Fax Application Users security field are granted the ability to submit outbound fax jobs via ExtraFax API. Any users or groups listed in the Allowed to Send Fax security field are granted the ability to send faxes via ExtraFax. Fax submissions can be via email or while using the ExtraFax client or print driver from within any Windows application. Any users or groups listed in the Allowed to Dial Long Distance Call security field are granted the ability to send faxes to fax numbers that are considered long distance calls. Any users or groups that are listed in the Allowed to Dial International Call security field are granted the ability to send faxes to fax numbers that are considered international long-distance calls. Lastly, looking at the Security Policies section, control whether or not organization administrators and/or inbound fax administrators can see all pages or only the first page content while viewing another user's fax. We hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. To learn more about our products, please visit our website for more product information and additional tutorials. Visit us at www.extracomm.com.